As a collective, are we misremembering things? So many people remember the funeral of Nelson Mandela in 1990, but it didn't happen. That's where the phenomena all started. Follow me down the rabbit hole about the Mandela Effect. Hi, friends, and welcome back to the rabbit hole. I'm your host, Danny, and today we are talking about the Mandela Effect. I let you all vote last week about what you wanted to hear, either the Disney Frozen distraction or this. So many of you, obviously, that won, but a lot of you voted for this as well. So I thought I would just go ahead and give it to you, as like a little, here you go. But before we get into that, I created a Patreon for you all. So if you want to just like get your episodes like a little bit early and you don't want any ads in them, there's like a $3 tier. If you want an extra episode, like a current events episode every month, there's a like $7 tier. And if you want 2 extra episodes, so that current events episode and then like an extra just like conspiracy theory episode, might be like a little more like outlandish maybe. I don't know what they're going to be yet, but like just like an extra one of these episodes, well, there's like a $15 tier for that as well. If you would love to support us, that would be great. You'll also get like early access to the merch store when we open up that. So yeah, that's our Patreon. Go check it out. There will be a link in the show notes, but there are a lot of links in the show notes this week because the Mandela Effect, there's so many things. So it'll be the top one. The very top link will be the Patreon. The very first episodes for that will be coming out in November. So if you join now and there's nothing yet, it's because it hasn't come out until November. November 1st, like the first week in November, will be the current events episode. And then the middle of November will be the extra episode if you're like the level 3 tier or whatever. Anyway, enough about that. On to the Mandela Effect. So the first time the term Mandela Effect was used was by some of the speakers at DragonCon in 2009 when discussing their shared memory of Nelson Mandela dying in the late 20th century. But that's not what happened. Like, the effect is named after the shared memory, but is now referred to about any like shared memory that isn't actually accurate, but we don't actually have an explanation for. So, and we're going to go through a bunch of these guys. So, and I apologize in advance. I might blow your mind on a couple of them. If you haven't heard of this effect yet, hold on to your britches because this is going to get strange. The term Mandela Effect actually refers to the phenomena of misremembrance, not any theory like explaining why we're misremembering. Author Fiona Broome was the person who coined the phrase and who started the original website, MandelaEffect.com. And that's actually where I got a lot of my information. Although you can Google, YouTube, there's a million things out there about the Mandela Effect. In fact, on Instagram, there's like a filter that is like it's a quiz, right? And so you have to tilt your head one side to the other, like whichever one's correct. And it's a Mandela Effect like quiz on Instagram. It's everywhere. So she was the original person who coined the phrase, and she wanted to find out just how many people like misremember the same event, meaning the Nelson Mandela death. Well, okay, so let's get into Nelson Mandela. He was arrested and sentenced to life in jail in 1964. He was fighting for democratic free society. In 1988, while still in prison, he was diagnosed with tuberculosis. Mandela was released from prison in 1990 and went on to become the president of South Africa in 1994 and stepped down after one term in 1999. But people don't remember that. Thousands of people remember a very televised funeral for Mandela. Public mourning in Africa, a heartfelt speech from his widow, the whole 9 yards. Like, people remember him dying. Like, basically, I didn't exactly find like a date of when they thought he died, but I'm kind of connecting the pieces myself, saying that I think when he was diagnosed with tuberculosis, that's when they thought that he died. I don't know for sure, but that's just kind of what I'm putting, when I did my research, put all these pieces together, that's what it seems like. Mandela died in 2013. After becoming the president and then stepping down, like living a life, he's married 3 times, he's got a bunch of kids. He died in 2013. He did not die in 1988, 1990, that time frame. There are over 50 examples, well more than that, of misremembered facts. There are so many examples, and we're going to get into them. So, like I said, guys, hold on to your britches, because Nelson Mandela was like the straw, just the tip of the iceberg here. Like, that is not that. I mean, it gets weird, and some of these, like, I misremember as well. I'm just as blown away by this research that I did. Anyway, the first example I have is Jif peanut butter. It's remembered as Jiffy. Like, some people remember it being Jiffy, and maybe people are getting mixed up with the competitor Skippy, but like, instead of it just being Jif, they think it was Jiffy, and maybe like now it's Jif. But no, it's always just been Jif peanut butter. That's it. Billy Graham's funeral on TV. So many remember his funeral being aired on TV prior to his death, and he died in February of 2018. Basically, just similar to Mandela. People remember him dying. This could be attributed to like confusing his retirement announcement and his wife's death, but people remember Billy Graham dying and remember his funeral being on TV. Challenger shuttle explosion date. Did the Challenger explode in 1984, 1985, 1986? Was it in the wintertime? Was it another time of year? Like, do we even know? Well, according to Wikipedia and the Britannica, the Challenger exploded on January 28th, 1986. So, people remember it in different years, but that's when it exploded. Looney Tunes. Looney Tunes is spelled like Looney, Looney. Tunes is Tunes, not Toons. It's not like cartoons, it's Looney Tunes. And cartoons make sense, right? Because like they are cartoons. But no, it's like tunes, like a musical tune. The Bernstein Bears. I've always said the Bernstein Bears. So maybe, and that's always how I've heard it said, is the Bernstein Bears. Or like the Berenstein Bears. And so maybe that's why we're a little confused on it, is because that's how it's said. But this is basically like where the premise of the movie The Mandela Effect started. The main character noticed that he remembered it being Berenstein, bears, but that's wrong. It's Stain. The Berenstain Bears. It's never been spelled with an E. Curious George. Curious George doesn't have a tail? Okay, but seriously, like, who doesn't draw a monkey with a tail? Like, who created this and was like, I'm just not going to draw a tail? It's just weird. Like, anyway, Sex and the City. It is remembered as Sex in the City. And I actually remember, I've never watched it. I just remember like being a kid, and I thought the show was Sex in the City. And then when the movie came out, I saw that it was like Sex and the City. And so I thought like, oh, maybe I just messed it up. But like after seeing this, like on the list of Mandela effects, I realized like I don't know, like maybe I made it up. Like maybe, I don't know. It's just weird, right? Febreze. You know, the thing you spray on all your carpeted fabric items. It is only spelled with one E. So how does this make any sense? Febreze is spelled Febreze. Febreze. Like, when you think of like freeze, it's Freeze. So like you think Febreze would have two E's, but it doesn't. It only has one E. Oscar Mayer wieners. Not Oscar Mayer. I mean, they say Oscar Mayer, but it's spelled Mayer, not Meyer. And I YouTubed the old jingle because I knew there was like, you know, a little jingle. And I even spelled it wrong with an E instead of an A. And most people must be doing this because YouTube tried to autofill like Oscar Mayer wiener jingle, and it did autofill it with the incorrect spelling. So people are misspelling this all over the place. But it still came up, and the cover on the like jingle in the YouTube was their old like slogan logo, and it's spelled with an A. So that's linked in the show notes if you want to go listen to the Oscar Mayer wiener jingle. There are colors that people misremember. How do you misremember colors? Right? Like I'm one of those people, guilty, right? Chartreuse is remembered to be like a pinkish, like reddish color, but it's more like a green color. Chartreuse. Like what? Sounds like it'd be a red color. There is an old TV show called Ghost Hunters TV show. It's called Ghost Hunters, but it is remembered to be called TAPS, TAPS, in all caps. And this may be because the real life term is called TAPS and some of the gear had said it, but people remember it being called TAPS and not Ghost Hunters. It gets weirder. The Henry VIII portrait in the history books, the portrait of Henry VIII showed him with a turkey leg in his hand. Although that's not the case. And now when you look in the history books, he no longer has a turkey leg in his hand. And I did look up a portrait, and you can, again, in the show notes, right? Just to see. And he is holding something in his hand. It would be his right hand. It looks like a handkerchief, although before I zoomed in, I thought it was a croissant. And I was like, maybe this guy's just really obsessed with food items. But no, it's like a handkerchief. But it's just weird that people remember a turkey leg in his hand. That's a drastic difference. A handkerchief to a turkey leg. Like, that's big.
Did you know that over 40% of Americans have a hard time swallowing pills? So when it's time to take your vitamins, large capsules and pills are out of the question. We know that gummy vitamins exist, but they're full of sugar, they get stuck in your teeth, and they only contain a fraction of the nutrients you need. Luckily, Easy Melts has discovered the ultimate vitamin sweet spot. Vitamins that melt in your mouth, taste like a treat, and are packed with nutrients ready for absorption, all without an ounce of sugar. For a limited time, Easy Melts is giving listeners a free 3-month supply of vitamin D3 with their first purchase. To claim your free D3 vitamins, visit try.easymelts.com/spring24. That's melts.com/spring24. Say goodbye to the old way of taking your vitamins and say hello to the easy way.
Skechers doesn't have a T in it. It's Skechers. No T in there. Skechers. Not Sketchers. I don't know how else to say it. I don't know how to explain this over podcast without like making it weird, right? Fruit Loops was never spelled like the fruit, like, apple, banana, fruit. It's FROOT LOOPS. LOOPS. Fruit Loops. Do you remember the Monopoly Man having a monocle? Because I do. I remember the Monopoly Man having a monocle. He doesn't have a monocle. Like, he has a cool top hat, but no monocle. Although, that would make sense. People do think, like, the people that are trying to, like, logic the Mandela Effect to death, they're like, oh, you're just getting it mixed up with Mr. Peanut from the Planters Peanut Company because he did have a monocle and a top hat. And he did have a monocle and a top hat. But, like, it's different. It's it's completely different. It's the Monopoly Man versus... whatever. Anyway, Pikachu's tail. And I remember this. Pikachu had a black, like, tail end, like, almost, I don't want to say burnt, but, like, the end of his tail was black, and that was never there. It's always just been a yellow tail. But Pikachu's tail, I remember it having a black on it. Like, it used to be black. Whatever. Sorry guys, I got super into this episode, and like all these things really mess with my head, so I'm just a little irritated about it. Did the candy, the Kit Kat, did it ever have a hyphen in between Kit and Cat? Nope, never did. It was never there. It was just Kit Kat, straight. That's it, how it is. It looks like it could have been there. When you see pictures of the hyphen being there, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. No, it wasn't there. The Fruit of the Loom logo, didn't it have a cornucopia behind the fruit? Or like maybe a plate under the fruit? It wasn't just like fruit floating in the air. But it could just be a case of rebranding, maybe, but no, like the fruit is just by itself. There's no plate, there's no cornucopia, there's nothing. It's just the fruit. Cheez-It. And I'm going to explain this one away. The logic here makes a lot of sense to me. So Cheez-It has never been Cheez-Its with a Z at the end of it. It's just always been Cheez-It. No matter how many times you call it, like Cheez-Its, because we all call it Cheez-Its, right? Like those crackers. You know what I'm talking about. You know, they're delicious. Everybody loves them. Maybe not everybody. Anyway, they've not ever been called Cheez-Its, but I know we call them that because we pluralize it because you never eat one Cheez-It. You don't eat one. Oh, I'm just gonna have one Cheez-It. No way. You eat like a handful of Cheez-Its. You eat half the bag before you decide if you actually want Cheez-Its. Like, and so then we pluralize it, and so that's probably where that misconception of like the Z being on the end of it, but it wasn't there. It's not there. It's not there. It's not. It's just Cheez-It. Similar double stuffed Oreos, it's only one F. Some people think that it's two Fs and stuff. They obviously don't buy enough double stuffed Oreos. I'm sorry. If you think that there are two Fs in double stuffed Oreos, there's not. It's just one F in stuff in the Oreos. Mona Lisa's smile. This one is highly debated because people distinctly, very, very distinctly remember Mona Lisa having a smile, like an actual smile. But it's actually just like basically that emotionless face. And you can like see a smile if you're looking for one, but if you're not, it's just kind of like a blank face, like resting bitch face, basically, like nothing really happening. If you're looking for a smile, it could be there, but like she's just sitting there, nothing on her face. But people remember a very, very distinct smile from her, but it's not there. The Flintstones with a T, not the Flintstones. 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 Cinderella's castle at Disney. So there is a castle at all the Disney amusement parks, but only one of them is Cinderella's castle, and that is in Florida. The castle at Disneyland is Sleeping Beauty's castle. Ed McMahon. We remember him giving out giant checks to families with Publishers Clearinghouse, but he actually never was the spokesperson for Publishers Clearinghouse. He did work for American Family Publishers, but he didn't hand out checks. His face was just on the envelopes. Now we're going to get into a lot of like movie quotes. And these, I think they're easy to misremember, or like we just make it fit into whatever scenario. So I'm trying to logic it. At the end, I'm going to discredit some of my logic. So just like hold on with me here for a second. In Casablanca, Ingrid Bergman's character is remembered saying, "Play it again, Sam, for old time's sake." But what she said was, "Play it once, Sam, for old time's sake." She never said play it again. Although it makes more sense that you would say like, "Play it again, Sam, for old time's sake." But she didn't say that. In Star Wars, the line is not, "Luke, I am your father," even though that's what we say. And this is, you can find the YouTube in the show notes. In the YouTube that I pulled up, the little clip, he does say Luke when he's like talking to him. So he says Luke at some point and then continues. He says multiple sentences and then he says, "No, I am your father." So yeah, I'm sure we've got some hardcore Star Wars fans in here, and you guys can for sure go back and check that one out. In Jaws, you think that they're saying, "We're gonna need a bigger boat." It is actually, "You're gonna need a bigger boat." Although looking back on the clip, I can see how you could like easily mix this one up because he says it so fast that it could have been "we're" or "your." So, and they're close words, like they're not too far off. Next is Forrest Gump. Of course, everyone thinks the saying is "life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get," right? But the actual saying was "life was like a box of chocolates." Because the whole line is, "Mama always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get." Which makes sense because at this point, Mama's probably dead. And so he's talking past tense. So again, maybe we just changed it to fit our narrative when we were talking about it. In Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, did the Wicked Queen say "mirror, mirror" on the wall? Nope. That did not happen. It was "magic mirror" on the wall. No matter how many times like you think you know what's happening in these movies, apparently we don't. And we even like mishear the Black Eyed Peas song when Fergie says, "I'm so 2008." she actually is saying, I'm so 3008, you're so 2000 and late. So again, it's in a song. I mean, how many times in that Taylor Swift song have you heard all my Starbucks lovers when really the line is long list of ex-lovers or something like that, right? So I don't have the exact quote up here right now in front of me, but you get the gist, right? We mishear things sometimes. But wasn't Tom Cruise wearing sunglasses in Risky Business when he came sliding in? You know, he was in his button down and his boxers. No sunglasses were worn. None. Nope. And he danced the whole thing without it. Sometimes we recreate it with sunglasses, but he never wore sunglasses in that scene. Gandalf did not say, run, you fools. He said, fly, you fools. This one really gets me because it shook me to my bones that it never happened. Like in Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal Lecter, he doesn't say, hello, Clarice, which is so like when you think about it and it like shakes you because you know like, oh, that happened and it like was so, it was scary. He only says good morning. So this is where you're like, okay, we didn't just like misremember, like got one word off. Like life was like a box of chocolates or life is like a box of chocolate. No, this is a whole like saying. He never said hello, Clarice. He said good morning. Okay. Whatever. In the song We Are the Champions by Queen, Freddie Mercury doesn't sing of the world at the end of We Are the Champions. He did do that in one of his performances, but that's not the way the song is recorded. It doesn't include that. Like, it doesn't include We Are the Champions of the world. Just We Are the Champions. That's it. And how many times have we sang of the world and it's never there? So many things. And it keeps going. Don't worry, I've got more. I Love Lucy. Ricky Ricardo never said that famous line. Lucy, you have some splaining to do. He never said that. He did say, splain that if you can, and Lucy, splain. Although this is a common one that is misremembered by a lot of people because I looked it up on YouTube and it had so many different examples of people saying this line, Lucy, you have some splaining to do. But he never actually said that line, ever. Like, not once in all of I Love Lucy. He never said it. It's said in shows like to maybe make fun of I Love Lucy or to refer back to I Love Lucy, but it's never actually said in I Love Lucy. Do you know how many states there are in the United States of America? Like, how many states do we have? Most people would say 50, right? Like that's what you would say. Some Americans and foreigners recall learning that there were either 51 or 52 states. And this could be actually, I recently saw a flag that had 48 stars instead of 50. So I thought that was odd. But this could be because like we have some territories that are US owned. They aren't states. They're just like basically American Samoa and Guam. They aren't states. But there are too many territories to add up to just like 2 more states, right? Because there are about 8 territories and a bunch of islands as well. You have obviously American Samoa and Guam, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, Federated States of Micronesia, Republic of the Marshall Islands, and Republic of Palau. The U.S. also has a bunch of islands that are not always inhabited. They're sometimes inhabited by like temporarily by military personnel or scientists. And I didn't name all the islands. These islands, a couple of islands are like Midway and Wake Island. If you remember like the Battle of Midway. And Wake Island is where like when flying across the Pacific, a lot of planes will stop to refuel, like military planes. When I was in the Navy, one time we had to stop there to get fuel on our way across the Pacific. Do you recall Sinbad playing a genie in a movie called Shazam? Well, that memory is incorrect. There is a movie called Kazam, and it starred Shaquille O'Neal as a genie, but Sinbad never played a genie. And I remember seeing Shazam and seeing anyway. Smokey the Bear was never Smokey the Bear. He's always just been Smokey Bear. And at first I thought maybe we're just getting him mixed up with Yogi Bear, because there's a whole movie series about Yogi Bear. But he is Yogi Bear, not Yogi the Bear. But Smokey the Bear, who tells you to put out your wildfires, or put out your campfires and your cigarettes so you don't start wildfires, he was never Smokey the Bear. He's always just been Smokey Bear. Only you can prevent wildfires. But he's always just been Smokey Bear. There is a famous photo from the protest at Tiananmen Square in Beijing. And this photo is from 1989 when the protest was happening, right? The protest in Beijing brought 1 million people to the square, and the Chinese government basically sent in the army to control it. The photo is called Tank Man. Maybe you've heard of it. Basically, the army went in and started shooting into this protest of 1 million people, 1 million plus probably. And they ended up killing and injuring thousands of people. But during this protest, this man went, you can see there's a video and there's a picture of this man carrying his groceries, standing in front of basically like a line of tanks of the army coming into the protest. People misremember, somehow it's remembered that the man either was killed or he was not killed. He was just like let go. This could be a case of the Mandela effect, but it also could just be like the Chinese trying to change history, because still in China, like they're not allowed to talk about this demonstration. You're not allowed to talk about it, discuss it, nothing. Like we do not talk about this protest that happened. So it's illegal, in fact. So this one I feel like is on the verge. Like it could be that we're misremembering, like whether he died or he didn't die. And I'm going to assume that he probably did die, because he was trying to stop the tanks. But it could also just be the Chinese trying to change history, rewrite history, because they like to do that. So they might have like tried to take all the pictures down or videos down of him dying, or have it edited some way or somehow. I don't know. There are videos that show that he just like walked away unharmed. I don't know. This one could go either way. Do you remember Neil Armstrong? We talked a lot about him in our moon landing episode. Well, he died. I'm sorry. I didn't know how else to break the news to you. He's dead. Many people just didn't notice or forgot that the famous astronaut died. He died in August of 2012. And either it wasn't like widely published or talked about, but I mean, many people just don't remember that he died. I mean, he's a pretty famous person. He's the first man to walk on the moon, and he's dead, and people don't remember it. Okay, whatever. Mother Teresa, people do remember. Of course you remember the saint, Mother Teresa. But do you remember when she was canonized as a saint? Was it in the 1990s when she was still alive, or was it in 2016? Because if you said that it was in the 90s, you would be incorrect. She was not canonized as a saint until she had already died, and the Pope Francis in 2016 dubbed her a saint. The Lindbergh baby. This was so famous. This was back in like the 20s, 30s time frame. This little baby was kidnapped, and it was who kidnaps an infant? Come on. He was like 20 months or something. And he was kidnapped, and the whole world was focused on this case. Everyone was so concerned about this little baby that was taken. Many remember the case like just basically going cold, that they never found the baby. They don't know what happened to it. And I actually remember being told that the Lindbergh baby was just never found. Like the cold case of the century, right? That nobody ever figured out what happened to the Lindbergh baby. But they did, in fact, find the body of the baby, and they caught the killer. And the killer was actually sentenced to death for the crime. So why are so many people say like, oh yeah, that baby was never found? It's odd. It's an odd one for sure. Patrick Swayze's health is misremembered. The Dirty Dancer died from his pancreatic cancer, but some people do remember him making a full recovery from the cancer before dying. Leonardo DiCaprio's first Oscar. Leo was nominated several times. He's been nominated for Oscars over and over, but he didn't actually receive an Oscar until his role in The Revenant And that was, he received the Oscar for Best Actor in 2016. Some say he won an Oscar well before that, but that might just be a case of like him being nominated for an Oscar instead of actually him winning an Oscar. For this next one, we go back to Disney. This is the case of the Disney World Castle location. Some people remember it being at the entrance of the park, like walking through it to enter the park. I have only been to Disney World once in my life. I've never been to Disneyland, and I was like 4 when I went. So I don't have a great memory of it. I don't know where I remember the castle being. I remember seeing a castle because, like, obviously you see a castle when you go to Disney. But some people do remember, like some people remember you have to like walk through the park to get there, and some people remember it being the entrance to the park. Here's another one I think is really interesting. New Zealand's location. Do you know, in relation to Australia, where New Zealand is? Because I remember New Zealand basically being to the northeast of Australia is where I remember New Zealand being. And there are so many people out there that remember New Zealand being all over the place, directly west, northeast, southeast, southwest, northwest, like all over the place. New Zealand is actually located to the southeast of Australia. You can look at it on a map, you can find it, but it is funny to me that I misremembered this as well. People remember New Zealand being in all different directions of Australia. So, and now, some of these people, myself included, can be geographically challenged. Outside of the US, I can hardly tell you where anything is. I mean, I try. I do my best. I know generally where it should be. I know New Zealand is near Australia. I was under the assumption that it was on the opposite side of where it was. But anyway, but this many people being geographically challenged, and I'm sure people in Australia and New Zealand know relatively where each other are to each other. But the rest of the world, we're misremembering. So there you go, New Zealanders. You're out there like just floating, and we have no idea where you're at. Us dumb Americans. I'm sorry, guys. We're just it's probably the Mandela effect. Honestly, it's not us being dumb. It's this effect. This phenomena that we're all just like don't know where anything is or what's going on in the world. People literally misremember the sky. People recall changes in the sun, moon, planets and their moons, constellations, and even like the color of the sky. People are misremembering all kinds of different things in the sky. Agatha Christie, people remember her disappearing and just like never coming back. She was a famous author. After her 1926 disappearance, she did return, but never explained what happened. So I don't know if after that she wrote a book. I didn't write that down, but she did disappear for a time. There's so many more. I mean, I can just keep going. I have named quite a few of these effects. Some of the more popular ones. There's a lot more like lesser known ones, a lot about celebrities' deaths. So many about celebrities' deaths that people like remember them dying and then they didn't die or whatever. I want to urge you, if you want to know every single theory, you should go research it on your own. I've taken up a lot of time going over theories here. The Mandela Effect, or not just MandelaEffect.com will have, they have every theory, everything you could ever want. There's all kinds of things. Whitney Houston's family is on here. John Lennon, of course. I mean, so many things. They just keep on going. Cruella DeVille, MASH, Married with Kids. They're much more organized. They go in like celebrity section and then like misspelling section, all these different things. So if you want to know all those, go there. We're gonna kind of move on to the theories now. Like why is the Mandela effect happening? And don't get me wrong, memory is a fickle thing. But like, just how fickle is it, you know? It's weird to me that so many people can misremember the same thing in the same ways. If it's a false memory, then it's not part of the Mandela effect. I have said misremember so many times in this episode, but when thousands of people remember the same thing happening in the same way, even if we can't prove it, it's not a false memory. Like, you can create yourself a false memory, but like, or you hear a story and you just you're like, yeah, that's my memory. But a complete stranger walking up to you on the street is like, hey, I also remember Nelson Mandela dying. Like, that's weird. It's weird. How do you have the same false memory? You don't. It's not a false memory. Of course, there are a lot of spelling effects, right? Like the Mandela effect, spelling effects. And that could just be us like not paying attention or assuming that's the way, like, that makes the most sense to us. Such as like the hyphen in Kit Kat. It makes sense that there would be a hyphen. It not being there could just be a brain trick, but also like people remember there being a hyphen. It's just it's weird, but again, and the Berenstain Bears, that could just be us like just saying the word wrong. Like a lot of people say mountain, but it's mountain. Like it's just weird. Like people say mountain ketchup different ways. Colorado. It's just different things, right? It's weird to me that, and okay, we're going to explain away the spelling thing, but what about all the other things? It could be wrong headlines or pre-written obituaries that got released by accident. But again, like that these don't explain away every theory. It just explains away a couple of the theories. We can explain away the spelling effects. We can explain away the death effects. We can't explain away the entire Mandela effect. There are theories of alternate universes. Scientists have actually speculated that there are infinite parallel realities, and we are just like living on, basically they're all living on top of each other. We are living in one of them. Maybe we slid into an alternate dimension or universe. Maybe two dimensions are colliding. That's this alternate universe theory or infinite realities. I think like this makes the most sense if you think of it like a stack of papers. Basically, if every parallel reality is stacked on top of each other and then a little bit of water gets spilled onto them, a couple of the papers might end up sticking together, or some of the ink from one of the papers can bleed into the other paper. And that could be what's happening. That's a perfectly logical explanation for why some of us remember certain things differently, right? Basically, in these infinite parallels, there is a version of you in each of them. So you remembering something that somebody else doesn't remember, like some of these I don't remember and some of them I do remember, that could be like I only got so much water spilt on my parallel whatever, right? I'm just making this analogy up. And I don't know what the water would be. I don't have an answer for that. I'm just giving you an analogy to make this scenario make sense. We also have like the butterfly effect theory. So if someone, and you've seen it in every movie, every show, if someone goes back in time and they do anything, it can mess something up, and then like it messes it all up for like the future. Well, if someone did time travel and they went back in time, first of all, it would have had to be pretty recently, because we have these theories examples all the way up as recent as like 2019, 2020 in some cases, that like we're misremembering. So recently somebody must have gone back in time and done something. So we are remembering, because we didn't go back in time, we are remembering what happened, but because one person or multiple people went back in time and changed something, now it changed what actually happened. It changed history. So our memories are of before that person went back in time, but what actually happened in this timeline is different, which is another really solid theory. It has been thought that we are all time travelers, and this is due to like a doorway effect, and we didn't realize it. The doorway effect is basically when you walk into a room, like you are leaving your bedroom, you're going to go into the kitchen because you want a glass of water. But when you walk in there, you forget why you went in there. So you come back into your room, you're like, oh yeah, I went to the kitchen to grab a glass of water. Then you go back out there, you forget, you come back into your room. You can do this, a million times if you are really affected by doorways, but eventually you'll probably remember that you're thirsty. That's the doorway effect. The time travelers thing, I didn't find a lot more information on that. I felt like that theory of why the Mandela effect is happening is lacking, in my opinion. I feel like the butterfly effect, the parallel universe theory, those two have some stamina. I know, of course, people try to explain it all away. It's hard to explain all of it away. It's hard to explain everything away. Like how do you explain that people are literally telling you that the Lindbergh baby case went cold when it was solved? How do I misremember where New Zealand is? I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm very geographically challenged outside the US. So that's like on me. Maybe, I don't know. But just so many different things. There's so many examples. Example after example I gave you. And there's more. There's more examples on the internet. Go find them. I don't know. It's up to you guys. You decide. First of all, do you even believe in the Mandela Effect? Did any of these things like hit you and you're like, oh my gosh, I do misremember that? I want to know. Like, I'm going to post some things on Instagram, so be looking out for that. But that's the Mandela Effect. That's what's happening. We're all just crazy. We're all crazy. So until next time, my friends, stay skeptical, and I'll see you guys next week. Hey friends, The Rabbit Hole is an independent podcast with everything you hear done by me, Danny Mercy. I appreciate all of your support. Please rate and review wherever you're listening. If you want to follow us on Instagram, it's at rabbit.holepodcast. And thank you, Zakar Balaha, for our awesome intro.